What?
Good day, and welcome to What's Happening MoCo, an authentic, unscripted podcast from your Montgomery County government. Now, here's your host, Derek Kenny.
Good day, and welcome to What's Happening MoCo. Today's episode, we have resources from the county government for those affected by the government shutdown. Whether you're being affected by the complications of SNAP benefits or the ongoing furlough of government workers, please watch this episode. We have a special guest, Earl Stoddard. He's an Assistant Chief Administrative Officer in charge of resources and public safety for the Montgomery County government. Good day. Welcome to the show, Earl. Is it okay if I call you Earl?
Absolutely. Thanks, Derek.
All right. And I want to say thank you on behalf of the residents and others in the county for all the good work that you've done during COVID, which seems like it was, 1,000 years ago, but just 2 or 3 years ago, we were in the midst of COVID and we've had all those protocols and safety measures in place. And you had quite a role in that. Tell us a little bit about what you do now as Assistant Chief Administrative Officer, and then a little bit about what you did then. And then let's get deep into the resources available to families and individuals in the county when it comes to the impact of the furloughs and the complications with SNAP benefits.
Sure. So I moved to the county executive's office as an assistant CAO in September of 21. So it's about 4 years, a little over 4 years now that I've been working with the county executive's office. I'm one of 3 assistant CAOs at this point, and we have a deputy CAO and then obviously the chief administrative officer, Rich Madalino. We as a team basically divide up all the functions of the executive branch of government and have different portfolios that we all focus on. For me, obviously, given my history as the county's emergency manager from 2016 to 2021, I took the public safety portfolio amongst several other things, including parts of health and human services that focus on homelessness and homelessness prevention, behavioral health and mental health services, Office of Food Systems Resilience, and I also happen to have our Vision Zero portfolio as well. So it's a pretty broad, diverse portfolio.
That's pretty major. You have Vision Zero, which is the county's initiative to improve pedestrian safety.
Yes, sir.
All right. How's that going?
It's it's one of those things where it feels like it's one step forward, one step back. Sometimes we make progress, and then we have a unexpected fatality. Vision Zero is one of those challenges where it's a multi-billion-dollar, multi-year challenge because we've got to remake some of the designs of our roadways, and obviously with technology like cell phones, distracted driving has increased a lot, and so it feels like we make progress and then something happens and we feel like we need to make more progress. So it's going to be one of those things where it's going to take a generation of investment for us to address.
Awesome. And before we get to the subject, the core subject, what's 1 or 2 things that residents could do to help you achieve the goals of Vision Zero?
Yeah, so I think we all have a role to play in roadway safety. Obviously, our pedestrians and our bicyclists are at the greatest risk. Those of us driving operate multi-ton vehicles with the many of us at this point drive SUVs, which have a little bit sit higher, and all make it very difficult for people to see. I think one of the things we tell people is be observant of the roadways. Do not be distracted by a conversation on your phone with someone in the car, with the text that just came in, with an email that you're waiting for from work. People don't take for granted that things are just going to operate as they should on the roadways, and they often will not. And that applies to our drivers principally, but it also applies to our pedestrians and bicyclists. We were discussing before the show, I've been doing a lot of walking. So, I know as a pedestrian all the time, but I need to be very cautious. I don't assume that someone's going to stop at the stop sign. I think that's important too. It shouldn't be that way. People should follow the rules of the road. But the reality is people are distracted and we need to take that into account. And so drivers, pedestrians, bicyclists just all have to play a role in this and make sure we contribute.
Fantastic. And speaking of contribute, the county has been stepping up, as has the state of Maryland's been stepping up to help support families and individuals affected by the furloughs and the complications involving SNAP. Let's cover some of the things and some of the key resources that are available to those that qualify within the county. And let's start with food insecurity. What are some of the resources available for people that are facing food insecurity? And by that, people that might be short on funds for groceries or for lunches or breakfast for their kids.
Yeah, so let me start off by saying, sort of this government shutdown is really tragic. It's really affecting a lot of our residents. My
Yeah.
wife actually is a furloughed federal employee herself,
Oh,
so
no.
it's affecting my family in not, obviously not to the extent that it's affecting some families where you've got two breadwinners or the primary breadwinner of the house that's affected by this. And obviously, we're trying to think about all the different angles of support that people will need as we address this. So let's start by let me preface this by saying I'm going to talk a lot about different services today. The easiest way to access any of these services is actually to contact the county's 311 service.
Okay.
They'll connect you, and a lot of these services are eligibility based, meaning they'll do an assessment and they'll be able to tell you through our Department of Health and Human Services and the partners that work with them, you're eligible for A, B, and C, or D, E, and F, and depending on
great.
your circumstances, they'll be able to give you a lot of information.
So for the starting point, for those
Yeah.
not familiar with 311, they can simply dial 311 if
Correct.
they live in the county, if they're
Correct.
in the county, and it will route them to county information
Yep.
services.
Or if you're outside the county, but you have an access to Montgomery County, you can dial 240-777-0311 as well.
All right, thank you.
And so that'll get you in, and you'll talk to someone. It's you'll get a call taker, and they'll, depending on what you're asking for, they'll
right.
direct you to the right service from there.
Oh, I'm sorry, a real human being?
Oh, a real human. I know
All
it's sort of quaint nowadays to
Hey.
think about, but yeah, we do that too.
That's powerful. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. And so for food resources, obviously, this is something the county has invested a ton in. Actually, we talked about COVID before this, and this really comes out of our work in COVID, where food availability and food security were such a prevalent issue given the closures, the impacts on restaurants and businesses. We had a lot of people who were unemployed. Unemployment at that point was through the roof, and we knew we had to provide food support. So we actually stood up at the time our Food Security Task Force, which grew into our Office of Food Systems Resilience, led by Director Heather Bruskin, who came from the Montgomery County Food Council. So the county invests about $23.5 million in food services.
Wow.
Just part of the normal budget for this year.
Okay.
$13 million of that goes through our Office of Food Systems Resilience that are typically given out via grants that go to our nonprofit providers. A lot of the frontline work in food is done by nonprofits. It's been that way for as long as food support has existed. We just actually are supplementing and helping to coordinate some of those efforts. And so there are a plethora of nonprofits around the community that are offering food assistance. And many of them have actually stood up additional hours and services for furloughed federal workers.
Okay.
The easiest way to access them, as I said, besides 311, is our Office of Food Systems Resilience actually maintains an entire calendar and map of all the locations, the times, how they can be accessed. And depending on there are delivery services, there are drive-up services, there are by appointment food pantry where you can go in and pick the food you want. They have different hours and different availabilities. They're in literally every zip code in Montgomery County has a food provider or more than one potentially that's associated with them. And as I said, either through 311 you can get that schedule, or you can visit our Office of Food Systems Resilience website. There's a link right at the top of the page that says, "Do you need food?" Click on that. It goes and lists out the schedule and the map and all of the information to access food across the county.
So not only are there food resources, but there are different ways to access those resources, oftentimes convenient. On the news, recently you've seen across the country lines of people that are impacted by the furloughs and by the complications with SNAP benefits. And I say complications because things are changing day by day. Even as we record this podcast, there's been a requirement from the courts for the federal government to pay some measure of SNAP benefits. So we'll see if that will happen.
Correct.
But even if that does not happen, the county stands ready, and the organizations that you mentioned stand ready with food resources.
Yeah, and obviously Governor Moore has been a big assist in this. So there's contingency funds that the federal government had that the court ordered them to utilize for SNAP benefits. SNAP benefits across the country cost about $8 to $9 billion a month. They had about $5 to $6 billion in the contingency fund. So essentially, the federal government initially committed to say, we'll cover half of the November distribution using those contingency funds. And Governor Moore came and stepped right in and said, if they're going to cover half, the state of Maryland's going to cover the other half.
Oh, wow.
For the state of Maryland, it's about $62 million to cover half. It's about $123 a month across the state of Maryland. It's about $12.5 million per month in Montgomery County. We have about 67,000, I think, people who are SNAP recipients in Montgomery County, and 37,000 of those are children. So I think it gives you a sense of the need within our community. And they are they are, in addition to the SNAP benefits, the governor also put $10 million into local food banks last week that allows those to immediately get distributed to area food providers like the Capital Area Food Bank, Manna Food Center, and all the smaller nonprofits that utilize their resources to distribute. And so there are a ton of available resources that are being brought to bear, in addition to the fact that, what we've really seen in Montgomery County is we have a very generous population.
Right.
We have a lot of residents who are willing to donate their time and their money. We have federal workers who are furloughed, who are donating their free time to work at food pantries to serve their fellow furloughed federal workers or others who are impacted by the shutdown. So it goes to show what Montgomery County has. And what that means is we have not yet seen the longest lines, because, as I said, we have some drive up situations, but we also have by appointment. We have food pantries where you can walk in and essentially do it's a lot like a trip to the supermarket for people, where you can go to a list of shelves and you can pick what you want to take with you. And so, those, select pantries are available as well. So, I think we've got a number of different options. We had invested in this before the federal shutdown had started. There's additional resources after the shutdown has begun. Actually, we've been working with the county council. They're actually in the process of passing a supplemental appropriation to add an additional $3.5 million of food resources. So, I would say this is an area where our county executive has been really committed to making sure that there are a plethora of food resources in Montgomery County. I know that that's not going to, it doesn't always meet the full need, but we're in a much better position with a system that can augment to support our federal workers than a lot of other places are.
Well, we're going to take a opportunity here in the program to insert some applause, and you'll hear it in this recording, for all the people that are volunteering, the organizations that have stepped up their capacity and their services, and also, of course, the county government for filling in the void, and of course, the governor and the county executive for providing their leadership, but also resources that will directly benefit the residents of Montgomery County, Maryland. So when people go or they call 311, what can they expect the experience to be like? What is, when you go to pick up things, do you need to have your ID? Do you need to have paperwork?
So they'll do, for most services, they'll do an assessment of what's available to you. So for most food resources, there's nothing you need to provide. You show up, we're going to serve you. Okay. That's by design. We're not trying. Those are meant to be really open opportunities where if you need food, we're going to get you food. In fact, that we often allow people, and most of the locations will allow you to pick up from multiple people as well. But you should obviously, once you go to 301, they'll give you the best option. You can review exactly what that site does to operate. But many of the sites allow for people to pick up for multiple families at once, things of that nature. It's meant to be an open and accessible process. And so by design, and we've been working with our partners for a long time to make sure that we increase those options. Excellent. And so you're not going to need to be able to demonstrate that you have a need in most cases, or I can't think of any cases where you'd have to demonstrate that you have a need. Really, if it's one of those things where if you show up, and we may collect some basic non-identifiable information like your zip code or something like that, because what we're trying to do is really get a good assessment of where the need is, so we can continue to direct more resources to the places that have the most need. So if you get any questions at all, it's questions that are not going to be specific to you as an individual. They're going to be specific more to the kinds of services that you need, so that we can better dedicate our resources in the places that have the most need and are that are the most receptive. So
fantastic. So it's a fairly easy and respectful process that people should feel comfortable coming out and getting help.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why they exist. That's why, we have a strong local government that partners with our strong nonprofit partners. We know people are struggling. We want to make sure that we have the resources available to help them.
Fantastic. Now, for those workers, furloughed workers, that may be, I think the saying is that most people and families are 2 or 3 paychecks away from being homeless. And that's anecdotal, but there's some truth to that. So there may be some furloughed workers that may be facing trouble with rent, trouble with mortgages, trouble with things of financial nature that the furlough has really put them and their families in a bit of financial distress. What resources are available when it comes to housing for furloughed workers or other workers that may need assistance.
Yep. And I'll just reiterate that all of these can be available through our 301 system. You'll get them. So our Services to End and Prevent Homelessness has a number of rental assistance programs that, depending on, and there are things that will increase your qualifications. So, for example, if you're over the age of 55, if you're disabled in any way, we have obviously programs that are niche that will help and expand the resources available. But again, it depends in part. This is one category where there's going to be an eligibility determination because we have a lot of residents in need who are not furloughed federal workers that we're trying to make sure that we have equitable resources available to. But this is one of those things where they'll do an assessment for you, your individual circumstances, and they'll provide basically guidance on what you're eligible for in this space. But as I said, there's millions of dollars available every year for rental assistance in Montgomery County. We regularly do work on eviction prevention, for example, to make sure that we are prioritizing the resources that are going to keep people housed and make sure that they're comfortable. And obviously, I think that within the federal workforce, obviously there are contractors for whom the expectation is that you will not necessarily get your paycheck back once the federal government goes back. If you're a federal worker who's just on furlough, obviously the presumption at this point is until we, by law, they're required to give you back pay. And so obviously in those situations, we're really trying to just buy someone the time that they need to be able to get to the next paycheck. Whereas if you're a contractor or someone who's not going to be getting back pay, those we're going to prioritize some of our resources towards those individuals to make sure, because their situation is not going to be improved when the federal government does get back to work. And so this is one area where there are absolutely resources available to people. They are a lot of resources available depending on the nature of the circumstances of the individual person, their age, their health status, et cetera. But really, this is where our Department of Health and Human Services will do that intake assessment and be able to tell people what they're eligible for.
Incredible. Great. And so the level of resources and the type of resources available are depending on the situation of the individual. So that's fantastic. That's whether you had existing needs before, or if you are temporarily have needs as a federal worker, or if you're a contractor. All those things have been considered. Must have been a very thoughtful process to develop the approach to providing resources in this, I would say, unique situation where we are at a record-setting length of furlough for federal government workers.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to go back to COVID, but I think there's a lot of parallels to the federal shutdown with COVID in the sense that you have economic interruption, you have people not being able to go to the workplace, you're having, when you have economic interruption, we know what that leads to. People have to make hard choices about, am I going to feed my family today or am I going to pay my rent?
Right.
And so we know that we want to try and make every one of those avenues easier. And oh, by the way, we're also trying to provide people resources where, hey, if you don't want to, how can you retrain, prepare your resume so that if you don't want to keep dealing with this federal shutdown, you want to try and find other employment, we're going to help you try and find that too. So we're trying to tackle this from every angle.
Fantastic.
Make sure that you have, because we know that if you have rent pressures, it affects your ability to pay for your health care. It affects your ability to feed your family. It affects your ability to make your car payment. And so obviously we're trying to tackle every one of those angles because we know that they're so interconnected that it's going to have cascading effects.
Wonderful. Do you also provide, in terms of not just fiscal resources, do you also provide advice for how to manage a temporary setback situation like the furlough workers?
Yes.
How to contact your creditors or debtor? Yeah.
Yeah. So we definitely offer this through. This is one of those things where we get a case. People are assigned a case manager when they start working with us, and so the case manager is going to have a number of different resources that are going to be available to them that will include guidance on how to best manage resources like that. That's what we have sort of a detailed social service process that includes, because like our goal in Montgomery County is to make our resources go as far as possible. And so what we do is we say, hey, can we, it may be money that makes things better, but it may also be a conversation with your landlord. It may be like, there are different avenues where we're not going to automatically just write a check to someone if we think that we can help them with another process that's going to not have us write that check because we know that we need those resources for someone else too. And so that's all part of the work that our case managers and social workers do in our Department of Health and Human Services once people reach out to them for services. And they'll, we take great pride in the fact that we do a lot of wraparound service providing in Montgomery County. And we have a very unique Department of Health and Human Services in the state of Maryland. We're actually the only county in the state of Maryland that has a joint Department of Health and Human Services. This is something we've actually uniquely taken on in Montgomery County as a responsibility locally that traditionally much of the human services work across the state is a state function. We're the only county that has essentially we're effectively grandfathered in to be able to provide social services at a direct level. And so we take great pride in that and have developed a real system that allows us to do that.
Right. Now, other than the food insecurity and, of course, things like rent and advice on managing rent and mortgage payments and how to deal with creditors, what are some of the other resources that have come to the forefront as needs and that the county might be able to assist with?
Yeah, so we stood up the American Job Center, which is focused on federal workers. Obviously, because this year began with a bunch of federal worker firings.
Yeah.
The federal government did a lot of that. And so, we stood up a center actually in Wheaton that allows for people to walk in who are federal workers. It helps them with resume building, interviewing. It connects them. You can get directly connected there to food services and other through MANA actually is operating the food supports through our American Job Center. And you can actually get additional resources in a one-stop shop there for federal workers. The other thing we also do is we know how stressful this period is. And so there's a lot of mental health resources available for federal workers and furloughed federal workers. Because, as I said, my wife is, I just know there's a perception that I think the furloughed federal workers are like, oh, this is a vacation for them. It's not. These people are, by and large, dedicated civil servants. They want to be going in and doing the work of the people. And my wife does cancer research. So yeah, she got into that because my mother-in-law is a multiple time cancer survivor. So she's invested in the work. And so I can see how federal workers would be struggling because, they have their life's work has been essentially denied them for 36 days at this point and with no end in sight, unfortunately. And so we know that the mental stresses of that will wear on people. And so we've expanded our mental health services. Those can be accessed if it's an emergency need. Obviously, 988 is available to anyone across the county for those services, or our crisis center. Or you can just contact 311 if you think you need just more guidance on accessing other sort of non-emergent needs for mental health. And so that's another area that we've focused a lot on. I think those are the breadth of resources that we. I don't want to say that in all cases there aren't other things that depending on if someone had a unique circumstance where like utilities assistance, for example, that's another area where we have resources. Depending on the unique circumstances of individuals, our social service team has a really good job of like basically offering someone a whole plethora of different services that they might be eligible for, doing the assessment, saying, oh, you qualify for A, D, and F. And someone else maybe A, C, and D, as opposed to, for what they qualify for. And so there are other services. So I think the best thing I would tell people is get connected through 311 with our Department of Health and Human Services. They'll begin to do an intensive case management process with the individual, and they're really good at maximizing the benefits someone can receive.
Fantastic. And the county providing benefits and resources to the residents as a county should, as a great county of Montgomery County should. And that's what's happening in MoCo. Earl, Stoddard, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you so much to the Chief Administrative's Office and Officer, Rich Manalino, for allowing you to be here today. And then also for all the great things that you guys do, not only for the employees of Montgomery County, Maryland, but also directly for the residents of the county as well. Thank you. And for those of you out there, please take this episode, subscribe. Please share these resources with others that may need them. This is a critical time, and we should take this information. We should use it. We should share it, and we should make sure that our fellow residents are doing as good as possible in this, the beginning of the most wonderful time of year, as we celebrate Thanksgiving and the holidays.
Thanks for listening to What's Happening MoCo. Please subscribe via your favorite podcasting platform and follow us on Facebook. This podcast is brought to you by County Cable Montgomery, your source for news and information from the Montgomery County government. Connect with us via cable, Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube by searching for County Cable MoCo.